Time around, what happened to Binyamin and before him with Yusuf alayhi salam, you can't trick someone twice to that extent. And for the brothers, what they did, it is not possible for anybody to trust them anymore. So Yusuf alayhi salam had to send something to his father to prove that he was actually they were telling him the truth about Yusuf alayhi salam. Now, what's interesting, and what we mentioned last week, was Yusuf alayhi salam, out of all things, out of everything that he could have sent his father, he sent him a shirt. Right? He sent him a shirt. I don't want to get too deep into the details because we covered it last week. But just to cover the word qamis has so many things to it, right? The other thing I want to review it as well was the usage of words, repeating words in a story is actually a technique that storytellers use. A reoccurring theme or a reoccurring word, right? If you watch really good movies, or if you read a story that's really good, it plays off a theme that reoccurs in the story. And what it does is that it helps you connects information or details throughout the entire story. So it gives you like, let's just say a word, for example, like I don't know, like time, right? The story, it plays off of time. But if you hear a theme or a recurring word, it helps you connect details from the previous story in the past, and it feels like a whole story. If that makes sense. He's using a same technique in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. It's quite amazing because when it reoccurs in different themes of the story, but it uses the same word, which is qamis, a shirt, right? So just a detail where the storytelling within the Quran itself is such an amazing way to tell a story, right? We reach the word alqu and explain it in detail. To summarize, Surah Taha, whenever you hear or you come across the word alqu, or to throw or to toss, it has this connotation to something miraculous, something of a miracle, right? In the case of Musa alayhi salam, when he first spoke to Allah, Allah told him to throw the staff, and what happened afterwards was a miracle. In the case of the duel between Musa and Harun and the magicians, when they threw their staff, and when Musa alayhi salam threw his staff, something of a miracle came about, where the staff itself became a serpent. But something even more of a miracle above that was the magicians, all 70 of them, accepted the miracle of Allah. And they threw themselves. In fact, the ayah, فَأَلْقِيَ sorry, it's not from. وَلَا يُفْلِحُ السَّاحِرُ حَيْثُ أَتَى فَأُلْقِيَ السَّحَرَةُ سُجَّدًا. They threw themselves. The same word is used. They threw themselves into submission, into sujood. That in itself is more of a miracle than just the actual, the serpent, And lastly, the fitna of As-Samiri, and where he threw the sand into the pile of leftover items, and it became a cow, right? So based off of that, we come to the understanding that in this ayah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَلْقُوا عَلَى وَجْهِ أَبِي يَأْتِ بَصِيرًا, when they actually they threw the shirt onto the face of the father, a miracle happened, which his eyesight came back. It was restored, right? If we follow that opinion in which he actually was blind and it was restored from the shirt, a miracle, then in this context, this would make sense, right? فَأَلْقُوهُ عَلَى وَجْهِ أَبِي يَأْتِي بَصِيرًا. Now, another word that I wanted to focus on here, just really briefly, is Yusuf alayhi salam. Every time he refers to his father, what word does he use? He always uses my father, abati, abi. And it shows you the unconditional love that he had for his father, Yaqub. Now, after all of these years, think about it. You have many stories in humanity where when something happens to a child very, very early on, whether the parents kind of deserted the child or put them up for adoption, or even in this case, like something happened to the child and it was lost. Like I know, a lot of the Cham folks, we come from a war-torn country, and my parents actually lived during a time where there was communism, and there's many stories that we hear. Me as a youth, my parents and my elders, they would tell us that when they're escaping the fitna, because of all the stress and the struggle and just so chaotic, that there were often times where they lost their child, or they had to get rid of their child, or they had to leave, because if they don't leave, they would get caught, and they would leave back a child or what have you, right? In fact, a lot of parents, they had to actually suffocate their own baby child to save the rest that they were the rest of the people that they were with, because if they heard the baby, the soldiers would hear the baby, and it would come and they would capture all of those who were with them. So imagine a mother having to suppress or suffocate or even kill their own child to save everyone else, right? I went off to a tangent there, but you understand that there are effects with parent and child when they're separated. A lot of the cases you hear that the child themselves would blame their parents. Like, why didn't you come look for me? Oh, after all these 40, 50 years, you didn't look for me, right? What happened? Like, where were you my whole life? Yes, you might be my father, my biological father or mother, but you never took care of me. I never grew up with you. But in reality, they don't understand the context. They don't understand what happened, right? If you look at the story of Yusuf, not once did he have that ill feeling against his father. And it would have if you really think about it, easily he could have said, why didn't you protect me from my brothers? Why did you allow me to go with them in the first place? Right? Like, he could have easily blamed his father for what had happened. But up until this ayah, he still calls his father Abi. My father, a possession form, is mine. You understand? Unconditional love. Not once do you have the sense that he blamed his father for anything that happened. Now, the lesson that I took from this is that not only that we should respect our parents to the utmost respect, no matter what they did to us, no matter what happened, even if they did something intentional against us, the fact that they're our parents, we should erase whatever they did. And we should still show respect, no matter what it is. Because that is Islam. That's what we're taught. Secondly, what I gained from this myself is that I started to think differently when it came to my prophet, Yusuf alayhi salam, as well as all of the other prophets, they're all my prophets. When I say my prophet, it gives me a sense of like closeness to them. Does that make sense? And I also did this with my God, my Lord. He is mine. Allah is my Lord. It gives me a sense of closeness that I can ask Allah anything I want because He's mine. Does that make sense? In the dua, there's a specific dua. Sayyidul Istighfar is the name of this dua. The nickname of this dua is Sayyidul Istighfar. Allahumma anta rabbi, la ilaha illa ant. Oh my Lord. So when you say Allahumma, you're already invoking Allah's name, right? But when you're reading this dua, you're saying Allahumma anta rabbi. You are my Lord. Wa ana abduk. And I am your servant. It gives you a different understanding that there is no intermediary. There's nobody between you and your own creator. That sense of closeness only exists in Islam. It's such an amazing thing because Christianity, they have Jesus, right? They have the three, which is kind of like odd. They don't really know who they're, to be honest, if you have three gods, you're like, okay, today I'm going to pray to you, right? Everywhere else, it's like you're praying to an elephant, you're praying to a cow, you're worshiping other than Allah. If they only knew that they can actually go directly to Allah, that in itself is better than everything in this world, this world and everything in. The fact that you can go straight to Allah, invoke Allah's name, and know that He's as-Samir. He listens to you, a sinner, a person who sins and disregards a lot of things that Allah commands us to do, yet He listens. So that same kind of closeness that Yusuf alayhi salam had to his father, even though he didn't see his father for years, he still calls him my father. Because who's he talking to here? He's talking to his brothers. He says, take the shirt, go to my dad, and put the shirt on his face. You understand? He could have easily said, our father, you and me, because that's his brother. But you see here, the context, he says, my father. Is a different understanding there because he has that unconditional love, that connection he still has with his father. You see, throughout every single moment of events that he has the ability to mention his father or remember his father, you always see that closeness that Yusuf had to Yaqub alayhi salam up until this point, right? So he never really blamed his father for what happened, where he could have easily did so. Lastly, in this ayah, it says Ya'ti basira. Ya'ti basira means to come back to vision, or to have vision, or even to get to start to understand something. Right? So two ways to understand this is that Yusuf alayhi salam knew that his father was blind, whether that be his brothers informing him or Allah informing him, whatever the case may be. Whether that Allah gave him that knowledge or not, right? Or basir can also mean to come to know something, right? So if you show proof or evidence, then okay, I know now. That's clear. It's understandable. Right? So you came to the understanding of it. Basir. Right? Whether either the case, it totally makes sense either way. Because Yaqub alayhi salam, he was able to see again, and now he understands that Yusuf alayhi salam is actually the advisor of Egypt. Both ways make sense. وَأْتُونِي بِأَهْلِكُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. Now this last portion of the ayah is actually is quite. It tells you a lot about who Yusuf alayhi salam is. Yusuf alayhi salam says, and once you do this, bring everybody here. All of your family, he's talking to his brothers, bring them all here. I invite every single one of them. So, in a sense, the invitation itself shows what type of person he is. Right? We were talking recently, a few classes ago, about forgiveness. About how Yusuf alayhi salam forgave. This last portion here shows you not only he forgave, he had care. He had care over his family, his own brothers. Not just you guys, but take all of your family and bring them here. I invite all of them. It rings true the characteristics of Yusuf alayhi salam and how caring he was as a person. Because he could easily just punish them. Bring my father here, and that's enough. You guys stay back. I'll say I'm taking back my father, because what was their intentions? Their intentions was that they wanted to have father to themselves, because they knew that father loved Yusuf more. The whole reason why they got rid of Yusuf was because they wanted their father's attention. They wanted father to be their father and not Yusuf's father. Does that make sense? He could have easily just flipped the script and said, you guys stay in Canaan and I'm taking my father. But all to myself. That's what they did. Right? It's subhanAllah. This is how the image of Muslims, this is how it should be. Not vengeful. You don't take revenge. Right? This is an image of a Muslim. Just because somebody does something to you doesn't mean that you have to do the same back to them. And that's when it comes to forgiveness. That's why being a good Muslim is harder said than done. You have to fight your own nafs. You have to swallow your own. You have to suppress, just like how Yaqub alayhi salam suppresses sadness. This is how Muslims are. It's difficult. Jannah is not easy. Jannah is not easy. We have to swallow our own emotions. When it comes to other people, we have to be better. We have to be ihsan. We have to be the best. That's the image of a Muslim. Right? Now the next ayah number 94. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَمَّا فَصَلَتِ الْعِيرُ قَالَ أَبُوهُمْ إِنِّي لَأَجِدُ رِيحَ يُوسُفَ لَوْلَا أَن تُفَنِّدُونَ. Now, this skips straight into Yaqub alayhi salam. Now, it's quite interesting because a lot of times when Yusuf alayhi salam is speaking, not too soon afterwards, Yaqub alayhi salam speaks. You know that? Even though we see the connection that Allah, how would you say it? I want to say vocally, but we don't. The way Allah tells the story, we already see the connection that Yusuf alayhi salam and Yaqub had. But while we're reading the story, there's a connection even within the script of the story. When Yusuf alayhi salam speaks, not too soon afterwards, his father is there with him. His father speaks afterwards. Yusuf alayhi salam he just finished giving information and details and directions to his brothers. The next ayah, Allah says, وَلَمَّا فَصَلَتِ الْعِيرُ. Once the brothers left with the caravan. Now, a lot of scholars, they mention, Ibn Kathir, he mentions that فَصَلَ or فَصِلَت means to separate at that very moment. Just to, if you take something apart, let's just say I unplug this whatever from the device. Once it removes from the device, that's infisal. That's separation right there. It means that it gives them the miracle, the miraculous event that happened right now is that once they left the boundaries of Egypt, they haven't even got close to Canaan yet. قال أبوهم. At that very moment, the father says this. He says, إني لأجد ريح يوسف. I indeed smell this the scent of Yusuf. لولا أن تفندون. If you didn't think that I was senile or I was insane. Now, the scholars mentioned that Yusuf, Yaqub alayhi salam, he's sitting amongst his family members, whether that's grandchildren or the children of his sons, or or their wives, for example, or even his own wife, Yaqub alayhi salam. But he's saying this in front of his family. Now, when he says this, he says, I smell the scent of Yusuf, or indeed, I smell the scent of Yusuf. Had you didn't think, or if you didn't think that I was crazy, right? It's interesting the way he worded it. Now, to understand what's going on here is that the brothers just left their Egypt, right? I think it was mentioned in Kathir, I believe, that I think it was Mujahid, if I'm not mistaken. One of the Mufassirun, they commented on what happened here, and they said that Allah sent down a rih, a wind, from Jannah that came down to earth and carried the scent from the shirt and carried it from us for a span of 8 days. He carried that rih in a span of 8 days, and he brought it to the nose of Yaqub alayhi salam. Now, what's interesting about this is that I looked on Google, and the actual distance would actually take about a week to 8 days from Egypt to Philistine, Canaan, the southern part of Palestine. And it takes about that same amount, right? So Allah carried the sense to Yaqub alayhi salam. Now imagine here, this was the first time that Yaqub alayhi salam was ever given any type of relief from Allah. Any type of suggestion from Yusuf was at this very moment. From this time in the past, there was nothing that Allah kind of sent him to kind of reassure his heart, other than the dream of Yusuf. He knew that he was going to see Yusuf again. That's it. What we can take from this is that when we are being tested, when our Muslim brothers and sisters are being tested in Philistine, in different places of the world, and they're going through so much in such a long time, you hear some Muslims, unfortunately, they say like, Ya Allah, when are you going to send me relief? Ya Allah, when is this going to, when are you going to help me? I've been waiting for 40 years, 50 years, 60 years. In the case of Ayyub alayhi salam, he was sick. Allah took everything from him. His children, his farm, his money, his wealth, his health. And yet, he was patient. Yaqub alayhi salam, he was patient for so many decades. And the first time Allah sent him relief was this very moment. So be patient, my brothers and sisters. Because indeed, inna nasrullahi qareeb. Allah's nasr, which is success or help, is close. But human beings are hasteful. We want things quickly. If we just understand the story of our prophets, inshallah, it gives us some enlightenment. How can we deal with these things? Allah's help may be immediate. It may be quick, but it can also be, it can also take a long time, right? Yaqub alayhi salam, he mentions this in front of his family members. And he says something interesting. He says, "Lawla an tufannidun." Ibn Abbas, Mujahid, Aqa, and Al-Qatada, and the likes, they explain tufannidu in a different word. And the word is tafassahun, or tafassahun, meaning like crazy or foolish, right? Or it can also mean insolent, right? He's going crazy. So if you can imagine what's going on here, his family members are surrounding him. In fact, the next ayah, they say, "Qalu tallahi." They swear by Allah, "Tallahi innaka lafi dhalalin qadim." Dhalalin qadim. They said to their own father or their grandfather, they said, "Indeed, you are just in your old delusions." Because Yaqub alayhi salam was speaking so many times about Yusuf alayhi salam. They know that he loved them. And at this very moment, how can you smell Yusuf? Are you crazy? You're getting very old. You're not there in the head. That's what they're saying to Yaqub, their own father. So Sa'di, they say that he says that this insensible response to their own father is very rude for them to do that. Let alone his father, he's a prophet as well. To say something like that, innaka lafi dhalalin mubin, you're in your old ways. You're kind of going crazy. For them to respond in such a way to their father, and let alone their father, they're a prophet as well, is very insensible. Like it shows you that they're not the brothers were just jealous, but that jealousy kind of expanded to their family members, right? That's what they're dealing with. That's what Yaqub alayhi salam is dealing with. Not only the jealousy was with his own sons, but it kind of pushed into the other family now. So it gives you an understanding that Yaqub alayhi salam was dealing with a lot more than we were thinking about. Not just his own sons, but families. Entire families are saying this. Qalu tallahi, they swore by Allah that you're stuck with your own way, your old ways. You're stuck with the past. Right? So Yaqub alayhi salam suggested something, right? Even before it happened. He says, "Lawla an tufannidun." If you didn't think that I was senile, or if you didn't think that was crazy, I actually smell something that's going. I smell the scent of Yusuf. And their response gave the suggestion of Yaqub alayhi salam truth. Because he said that you guys would think that I was crazy, and then what they said was that, yeah, you're crazy. you're kind of losing it there, right? This tells you something else. Yaqub alayhi salam, he knew his family. He had a very good sense of what would happen. He knew how they were, and he was very patient and gentle with them. Now, if you know your family members, right, and you know, for example, if you do something, or for certain people, you walk. It's like you're walking on eggshells. Have you heard that saying before? When you're walking on eggshells, imagine an eggshell. If you walk in it, how careful do you have to be? You have to be very careful to not break the eggshells. In fact, it's nearly impossible, right? So when you're walking on eggshells around certain people, that's what it means. That you have to be very, very careful with what you do around certain people. Because you know who they are, you know how they are, you know how they react to certain things. Even if you say something and you actually mean something good, they will take it the wrong way, right? Yaqub alayhi salam was the same way. You can tell by his words. He was very extra careful with what he said to his family, and we've proven that in the past. What his responses in the whole surah. So when they responded to him, not only Allah gives us a good example to how we treat our parents, but Allah gives us the opposite example on how we should treat, or how should we not treat our parents, right? It's kind of uncanny because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses Yusuf alayhi salam, the best example that we can follow, to treat his parents. Now, if we think about it, our Prophet Mohamad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't have parents. He didn't have that element. But yet we still learn good characteristics from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And even more so when we read the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, right? There's a balance there. Now, another, speaking about balance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives an example of how we should not treat our parents. How can you speak to your parents in a way that they did? How can you do that? How can you tell somebody who's dealing with a lot of stress, who's dealing with anxiety and all, who's blind because of it, and you're going to go to that person when they're already very fragile and old and say, you're going crazy? Yeah, what type of response is that? How can you even think about saying something like that? If I were to go to my grandfather right now, and I would say to him, I think, the way you're doing things and stuff like that, you're not really right in the head. I'm not really yelling at him. I'm not aggressive. But just to say something like that is very rude, right? Now, one of the actions in Islam that we know is that we are in sin. We're actually committing sin if we're not doing the specific action to the best of our ability. For example, like even prayer, for example, is still accepted if our heart is not always there. It's not 100% there, correct? Prayer is accepted even if your heart is not 100% there, right? A lot of the actions or types of worships in Islam, if we don't do it to the best of our ability, is still somewhat accepted. Except for this one. And that one thing is being dutiful and kind to your parents. If you're not being good to the best of your ability, ihsan to your parents, that's not enough. It is not enough. It is not enough. And we see it in the case of Yusuf, the best example, right? So respecting one's parents with their speech, their actions, their care, just being mindfulness. Like, for example, your mom has a favorite shirt or a favorite dress, and that one dress is her favorite. You go over the extent where you take that shirt and you iron it. Every time she washes it, you iron it without her knowing. Who does that nowadays? Or you take care of her shoes, or you do something for her that she doesn't even know about. Just because you know something about her, you take that and you just being mindful of your mother, her favorite food, right? Making her bed, treating her like a queen. That's what we should be doing. Now the next ayah. Ayah number 96. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about their arrival. Now you can see Allah skips so many, just with these 3 ayats, Allah skips a lot of details in which, if we know it, it doesn't benefit us. Allah goes straight to the point, and He says, فَلَمَّا أَنْ جَاءَ الْبَشِيرُ أَلْقَاهَا عَلَى وَجْهِهِ فَارْتَدَّ بَصِيرًا قَالَ أَلَمْ أَقُلْ لَكُمْ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So when the brothers arrived, they came with a bashir. Now the word bashir here, it can be understood in different ways. Ibn Abbas, with the haq and the likes, they say that al-bashir is barid, meaning is just information being informed. So, like for example, if I say to you guys, I have good news. Everyone here is going to get $1,000, right? It's good news. Like, oh yeah, like where'd it come from or whatever, you know? Somebody donated, and whoever came to my class, they donated to you guys. It's good news, glad tidings. It's just the news that's being informed. Does that make sense? Al-Mujahid and Al-Sa'di, they say that the Bashir is actually a person giving this good news. So it can be understood in different ways. Whether the case or not, it's still understood that the news is being presented to their father. Now Mujahid and Sa'di, they say that the Bashir, the person that's actually giving the information, is one of the sons by the name of Yahuda ibn Yaqub. Now Yahuda, some of the scholars mention that Yahuda was actually the one that presented the shirt, the bloody shirt in the beginning. They say that he was the one that actually gave the bloody shirt to his father. And they say that he wanted to what is it called? Redeem himself, if that makes sense. He wanted to redeem himself the second time around because he gave the false shirt in the beginning. Now he wanted to redo it, right? Now he's giving the true, the shirt that has truth in it. And that's the opinion of Mujahid and Sa'di. There's another opinion that none of the sons came. They actually had somebody else because of their shyness, or they were too shy to approach their father with the shirt. So they had somebody else to deliver al-Bashir, somebody else to deliver the shirt and give them good news, right? It's interesting that the scholars mentioned this opinion because this entire time, up until this point, this entire time, every single brother, they stuck to their story. And their story was that Yusuf alayhi salam was eaten by a wolf or a fox. He's gone. Now imagine they have to deliver a shirt to pretty much say that they were actually lying, right? They were lying in the beginning, this whole entire time. For decades. They were lying to their father for decades. It is the most embarrassing moment in the story for me. I can't imagine if I was lying to my father. Like, let's just say, I was driving my father's car and I crashed, or I bumped it. Right, there was a bump on his car. And the same day, my father says, "Oh, what happened?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. I wasn't driving." Right? And then years later, my father finds out. maybe because of, I don't know what happened, but let's just say somebody told him. And he comes to me, Muhammad, you remember that time when you bumped my car? So yeah, I'm sorry, I was lying this whole time. Right? It's the most uneasy and embarrassing moment for the brothers to do this. Because they have to admit. They're forced to admit their lies now. Why? Because they know that their brother's alive. And they promised their father to go get Binyamin, Yusuf alayhi salam, and the third brother as well. The eldest of them, Kibiruhum. So they have a task. And the whole entire time, they had to come and reveal that they were lying this whole time. I don't want to say it, but it's like kind of like a revenge that, but they had to reveal their lies now. And they did it in a way where the third opinion was that they didn't even go to their father because they were so embarrassed. They gave to the shirk to somebody else to deliver that message. Does that make sense? Right? So that was the third opinion in the word Bashir. Right? So Bashir can be the information that's being delivered. Bashir could be the person, which is two, which is Yehuda, one of the sons who wanted to redeem himself. Or the third was just some random, I don't know who the person is, but just a person that's not amongst the sons who delivered that message. Now here, the response of Yaqub at this very moment, he says, قَالَ أَلَمْ أَكُنْ لَكُمْ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مِنَ اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. This whole entire time, he's been teaching his sons about what? About Allah. Do you see? Every single moment that Yaqub alayhi salam has with his sons is always a moment of making sure they know something about Allah. Teaching them. He's using this opportunity to teach his sons about Allah. It is insane that Yaqub alayhi salam, when finally lies were revealed, he didn't talk about it. He didn't say, I told you so. I knew it. I already knew it. You didn't have to tell me. He didn't make them feel bad. In fact, he just said, didn't I tell you? Like not too long ago, I knew from Allah what you guys didn't know. I told you. A teaching moment. This is Yaqub. This is how we should be. If our child did something unthinkable, understand that is a very good moment and a very good opportunity to teach your child something. If they make the biggest mistake in their life, don't yell at them. They won't learn. Just let them know that Allah is going to be there for you. Just let them know that is a learning moment. And remind them about Allah. Why? Because when somebody is highly emotional, either very happy or very sad, or even very angry, that is a very perfect moment to teach them about Allah. Because they will absorb it. They'll remember that moment. Just think back for a little bit. Don't you remember the moments when you're the most happy? We remember those moments. Don't we remember the moments when we just wanted to just harm somebody? That guy, I remember that guy. He did something to me. I'll never forget it. Right? When you're highly emotional, I want you to stop. Especially parents. Stop. Think for a second. And just remember Yaqub. Stop yourself. And respond to your child the way Yaqub alayhi salam would respond. How would he respond? He would use that opportunity. He sees it as opportunity to teach his child something. Didn't I tell you? I told you. Allah, I knew something from Allah that you guys didn't know. And this was it. I knew it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He is looking after me. This is Allah. This is our Lord. I told you, I knew it. Right? It's amazing. He did not show any type of emotion in this very moment. When he could have, he didn't. Yet he taught his son something. He used that opportunity to teach them about Allah. So Yaqub alayhi salam, by recognizing Allah, and you can see Yaqub alayhi salam, his full trust and belief in Allah finally paid off. It paid off. Allah sent His relief to Yaqub alayhi salam. After this moment, they packed their bags and they went straight to Egypt. After this moment, relief comes after hardship. Inna ma'al usri yusra. And look at the hardship that Yaqub alayhi salam had to deal with. Not only the severity of the hardship from his own family, all the stress that he went through, his health was affected. That was a hardship in itself. But the length of the hardship is another thing. Maybe somebody can be sick for a month, a week, a couple days. But being sick for a very long time is difficult. Dealing with your family for a few days, for Eid, like, okay, you know what? I'll go to a family gathering. I'll eat just for one, and I won't see them for the rest of the year. I can deal with that one day. It's just because it's Eid. It's just one day. But to deal with your family for the rest of your every single day, that's where the reward is. Being patient with your family, that's where the reward is. Yaqub alayhi salam, the length, the amount of time that he had to have sabr, wallahi, this is why it's called sabrun jameel. Sabrun jameel. Not only the severity of the test, but the length of the test as well. Who can beat that? SubhanAllah. So we'll end it with this, inshallah. The sons, they finally says, they admitted to their guilt, and you can sense the ayah, that's the ayah number 97. They're guilty of what they did, and they feel remorseful. In fact, they say, قالوا يا أبانا استغفر لنا ذنوبنا إنا كنا خاطئين. They say, Ya Abana, O Father, O our Father, astaghfir lana, ask or seek forgiveness for us. Seek forgiveness for us, or seek forgiveness for our wrongdoings. Inna kunna lakhati'in. We are indeed mistaken. We did wrong. We admit it. We were wrong. So ask Allah to forgive us. Ask Allah to. You understand? They still had iman in them. They still had iman in them. This is why when I'm speaking about the family members and the brothers, I am very reluctant to mention to get into to explain them in a way where we picture them as bad people. Yes, they made a mistake, and it was a severe mistake. But they still had iman. Who are we? What was it, like hundreds of years later, 2023, to talk about them where Allah could have possibly forgave them? Are we promised Allah's forgiveness? No. We don't know if Allah forgave them or not. We can be Catholic tomorrow. So who are we to speak bad about somebody who has iman? And for me, I try my best not to get into too many details of their wrongdoing. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I just go by what is revealed to us. And I try my best to leave it as that. So I ask Allah for forgiveness if I've gone too far, or any mistakes that I've made in this entire program lecture. So they ask their father for forgiveness. Now their father says, ayah number 98, قال سوف استغفر لكم ربي إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. They say, or Yaqub alayhi salam responds by saying, Sawfa astaghfir lakum. He says, I will. Sawfa means something that's in the future. In the Arabic context, when you're talking about the future, there's two ways of doing it. Either using the word sawfa, sin, waw, and fa, or just putting a sin in front of a verb. For example, if you say sa'adhabu, I will go ila suqi. Sa'adhabu ila suqi means I will go. I haven't yet gone, but I'm going soon. I'm gonna go to the store. Right? But so sa in front of the sa'adhabu, the sa in front of the sa'adhab, meaning that you will possibly be going soon. It gives that connotation to it. If you have sawfa in front of a word, it gives a connotation that it will happen, but you don't really know when. It could be years from now. Or for example, if you ask like, oh, when are you going to memorize the Quran? Sa'ahfaz. If you say sa'ahfaz, meaning inshallah you'll do it soon. Sawfa ahfaz, meaning like someday in the future, right? It's going to be later in the future. Sawfa gives a sense that it's going to be later, a little bit later, not immediately later, but a little later. So the scholars mention here, like, why did Yaqub alayhi salam did not just ask for forgiveness then and there? Like, I'm going to ask Allah right now to forgive you guys. There's a few opinions, but I just want to mention one. Is that Yaqub alayhi salam, he wanted to wait so that it will be the middle of the night where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will definitely accept his dua. And what does that teach us? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know that when it reaches the middle of the night, Allah descends from his throne to the lowest heaven, seeking and looking for his servants that are asking Allah for forgiveness. Anything. That is the moment when Allah forgives. That is the moment when Allah accepts. And that's what the scholars mention, that Yaqub alayhi salam was waiting for that very moment. It shows you the care. This proves to me that Yaqub alayhi salam, he loved every single one of his sons. Every single, even though they made mistakes, to the severity of what mistakes that they made, he still loved them. The love of Yaqub towards his sons is amazing. Amazing. For him to do that, for him to not even reprimand them, to yell at them, to speak kindly to them, shows you what type of father he is. And that's what we should learn. As fathers, that's what we should learn. And then he invokes Allah's name again. Innahu huwal ghafurur rahim. Indeed, Allah, it is He. He is the most forgiving and the most merciful. He ties Allah with a lot of his sentences. We will end it there, inshallah. The next. So, with the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, we only have 3 more verses to go. 101, ayah number 101, is the end of his story. It completes there, and then the rest of the story speaks about the character of Yusuf alayhi salam and his connection to Allah and how he makes dua to Allah, and it's pretty profound. It's the way Yusuf alayhi salam asks Allah and makes dua to Allah really hit me when he was making dua. But the story itself ends at ayah number 101, and we've reached ayah number 99. Alhamdulillah, this is a ni'mah from Allah. If it wasn't for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this couldn't have happened. And for me, the knowledge that I gain from my studies is only from Allah. I couldn't have done it. I know myself. And it's something that Allah has blessed us with, that we're able to fulfill such a story as this in such a short amount of time. And I know it's been like, 7 months maybe? I think 7 months. But, and that's just once a week, right? But with that, we understand that all knowledge, even through a story, even with Yusuf alayhi salam himself, when he was speaking to the two men that he went to prison with, he says, "You're asking me to explain your dream." But what did he say? He says, "Whatever I'm going to tell you, all that knowledge is not from me. It's only from Allah." And that's what we understand. That this knowledge that we have right now between our hands, the knowledge of the Quran, is only from Allah. It's the greatest gift. And if this story does not show us the miracle and the gift of the Quran, then I don't know what to say. Right? So with that, inshallah, we end it here. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. What's up, brother? It's good to see you. How's it going? You look tired, bro. How's it going?